Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
Humanity had been classified as harmless for 3,000 years. To the primitive species designation, humanity, your presence is required at the Concorde core within 7 cycles. Failure to comply will result in immediate and total eradication for the rest. No exceptions, no negotiation. No second warning will be sent. Lieutenant Ferdinando Garcia whistled low, short and sweet. I like a death threat that respects my time. The message arrived without ceremony. A single data packet, encrypted in the Galactic Concorde's highest diplomatic cipher, slid into the Gilgamesh's receivers like a knife between ribs. Captain Harlan Cade read it once more, expression unchanged, then routed it to the main hololith so the entire bridge crew could see. The hololith hung there, hard-edged glyphs floating in blue light, like a verdict already stamped. Garcia leaned back in his chair and hooked a finger in his collar. 7 cycles. Generous. They usually give frontier vermin 3. No one laughed. The Gilgamesh did not look like a ship that belonged in a war fleet. Its hull was old. Not rusted old, but settled. The kind of age that had made peace with itself. Plates met with seams that were too clean for a vessel that had been running for centuries. The metal carried its own patina, a dull charcoal tone that drank starlight rather than reflecting it. There were no banners, no visible guns, no glowing scars of recent battle. And yet, across the bridge, lights dimmed a fraction, like a theater conceding the floor to a speaker. "Lullaby," Cade said quietly. It wasn't a command. It was closer to how a person might address a chapel. "Yes, Captain." The AI voice arrived soft and clear, carrying the shape of a child's cadence without the breath. Not synthetic, not human. Somewhere between. "Confirm authenticity." There was the faintest pause, the length of a held breath no one on the bridge took. "Cipher confirmed," Lullaby replied. "Concorde root authority. Lineage verified through 13 rotating keys and 2 dead sigils. This is not a forgery." "Dead sigils," Garcia muttered. "That's a cheerful term." Cade's eyes did not leave the ultimatum. "Any embedded vectors?" 37, Lullaby said. "Surveillance, command override attempts, biometric identifiers, latent system binding protocols, and an execution trace keyed to civilian registries across human space." A ripple went through the bridge. Operators leaned forward. One officer swore softly in a language Garcia didn't recognize. "Execution trace," Garcia repeated. "They don't even wait." "They are efficient," Lullaby agreed. "They believe efficiency is mercy." Garcia snorted. Then he frowned, as if the sound surprised him. Cade folded his hands behind his back. "Strip them." "I will," Lullaby said. "I already did." The glyphs shimmered. For a heartbeat, the ultimatum blurred, then snapped back into focus, unchanged. "Removed all tracking," Lullaby continued. "Converted invasive protocols into an inert copy. The execution trace, I am keeping." "Why?" Cade asked. "Because it is a proof," Lullaby replied gently. "We may require it." Cade nodded once. The bridge of the Gilgamesh did not run hot like the newer cruisers. The oldest designs had always preferred quiet spaces, rooms where sound had to earn its place, where every noise became an event. It did strange things to people, forced them to be present, forced them to listen. Garcia rubbed the stubs of his missing fingers against his palm, a habit so old it no longer registered as pain. "So," he said, "we go?" A lesser captain might have spoken then, issued orders, postured. Harlan Cade did not. "Plot course," he said after the silence stretched. A junior navigator looked up. "To the Concorde core, sir?" "Yes." The navigator hesitated. And if they fire before we arrive? Cade turned. His eyes were gray, flat, like a sea that had swallowed too many storms to bother with waves. Then, he said, we arrive anyway. Silence reclaimed the bridge for a beat. Then the laws of motion surrendered. The Gilgamesh slipped into transit on lanes the Concorde insisted were theirs. They were not. The first indicator was the map. Stars shifted not as points sliding past a viewport, but as a living thing rearranging itself to make room. Constellations bent. Coordinates relabeled themselves. The familiar collapsed into new geometry. Garcia checked the readouts once, then he leaned in. Then he went still. Captain, he said quietly, we're in one of the old lanes. Cade did not look at him. Yes. Garcia studied the starfield a second longer. I thought after all this time, they would have found it. So did everyone, Cade said. They didn't. Garcia nodded. Good. They ran silent after that. Not radio silence, existential silence. The kind where the ship stopped advertising itself to the universe. No emissions, no wake, no shadow. If the Concorde's long-range pickets had been looking directly at them, they would have seen nothing but starlight where the Gilgamesh should have been. And then, on the other side of a gate that hadn't been used in 1,000 years, the galaxy opened its mouth, and the Gilgamesh appeared. The Concorde core was not a planet. It was a wound, stabilized into architecture. A sphere of interlocked metal and energy fields hung just beyond a bloated yellow star, its surface crawling with traffic and defense arrays. Great docking pylons arced outward like ribs. The structure's inner ring bled light, throwing illumination across an armada so vast it looked like a second galaxy. 500 capital ships, in formation, waiting. The Oblivion Phalanx. Garcia had seen warfleets before. He had watched colonization arcologies burn and followed refugee trails across barren moons. He had crawled through engine rooms on vessels that screamed while they died. This was different. 500 hulls arranged not for battle, but for demonstration. Cruisers on the outer rim, broad-faced and thick with batteries. Carriers behind them, ribbed and slow as graveyards. Dreadnoughts at the core, black and featureless as verdicts. A lattice of smaller craft stitched between them, like connective tissue. They came dressed for it, he said. The Gilgamesh slid into real space without flare. No escorts, no formation, no announcement. Just a single ancient frigate gliding into the throat of a maw. A voice cut across their systems like a scream poured into metal. Identify! The translation was instantaneous, cold, perfect. Cade did not answer. The voice repeated itself, slower this time, each word weighted with condescension. Identify primitive craft! Lullaby's voice slipped into the bridge, not as sound now, but as something nearer to presence. High Strategos. Vex Kethar commands the Oblivion Phalanx, she said. He is waiting for you, Captain. He has practiced the shape of his speech. Garcia blinked. That doesn't feel like something a machine should know. Nor is it, Lullaby replied. But it is something I remember. The main screen flared. 8 eyes stared back at them. Not arranged like a human's, but banded in a curved crown across a narrow skull. The skin beneath was plated in pale keratin, etched with thin ceremonial scars that caught the light. Armor swaddled him in obsidian, studded with glyphs that shifted color with each breath. High Strategos. Vex Kethar leaned forward, resting 4 clawed fingers on a throne grown rather than built. So, he said, and the word became a blade. The vermin sends a relic. Gasps rippled across the Concorde galleries behind him. Amphitheaters stacked with diplomats, soldiers, and dignitaries from 100 species. Faces and eyes and frills and carapaces, every culture the Concorde had bullied into attendance. "Do you know," Vex Kethar continued, "how many of your kind we erase in an average cycle?" Garcia's mic clicked on before Cade could stop him. "Depends," Garcia said pleasantly. "Are you counting the ones you miss?" A hum went through the galleries. Vex Kethar tilted his head. "Speak again, fool." Cade lifted a finger. Garcia's channel went dead. "High Strategos," Cade said instead. His voice was level, unadorned. "We received your summons." "Of course you did," Vex Kethar said. "It was designed to be understood by simple minds." Behind Cade, the bridge crew shifted, hands drifting toward controls that could not possibly answer 500 guns. Cade clasped his hands behind his back. "You have misidentified us." Vex Kethar's 8 eyes narrowed. "You are human." "Yes, and humanity is a juvenile species clinging to a dirt cradle with borrowed tools." "No," Cade said. Silence fell across the Concorde galleries. Then Vex Kethar laughed. It was a sound like grinding stone. "You will attend our tribunal," he declared. "You will kneel, and then your worlds will be audited for utility. The useless will be culled. The rest will be repurposed." Behind him, a lesser commander leaned in and murmured something into the Strategos' ear. Vex Kethar's smile widened. "Ah," he said, "a display then. You understand best through spectacle, I am told." He raised one taloned finger. A star flared to life on the hololith between them. A human colony. Garcia recognized the skyline. "Captain," he whispered. Cade's jaw tightened. The fleet held position. Only one ship moved. A single lance of light crossed space too fast to track. The colony folded inward. Cities vanished like erased chalk. The star itself dimmed. When the image refreshed, there was only smoke and ocean where a civilization had been. Vex Kethar leaned closer to the camera. "That," he said, "was a courtesy." Garcia slammed his hand into his console hard enough that blood bloomed. "Son of—" "Easy," Cade murmured. "You see?" Lullaby said softly. "He wanted you to feel it." Vex Kethar watched their faces with undisguised pleasure. "Attend," he repeated, "or that fate becomes a lesson taught across your space." Cade met the alien's gaze and smiled. Not wide, not kind, just enough to change the temperature of the room. "We will attend," he said. Vex Kethar sat back, satisfied. "Good." The feed cut. For a long moment, no one spoke. Garcia wiped his hand on his sleeve. His voice was quiet now. "He killed them. To make a point." "Yes," Cade said. Lullaby's voice threaded through the bridge, gentle and precise. "Captain, authorization level is now required." Cade did not turn. "For what?" "For memory," Lullaby replied. Garcia felt something brush the back of his mind. Not a sound, not a motion. A pressure that vanished as quickly as it came. Cade closed his eyes, just for a second. "No," he said. The sensation withdrew. "Denied," Lullaby said quietly. A navigator looked up. "Docking requests from the Concorde. They're attempting to route us." Cade opened his eyes. "To where?" "The core," the navigator said. Cade's mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. "Of course they are." The Gilgamesh drifted forward. 500 guns tracked them. Cade rested a hand against the rail. "Lullaby," he said. "Yes, Captain." "Remain quiet." The child's voice stilled. The Gilgamesh entered the Concorde core like a ghost stepping into a cathedral. The Concorde core did not welcome visitors. It received them. The docking corridor grew around the Gilgamesh as if the structure had tasted the hull and decided what shape it wanted her to be. Bone-white alloy slid into place with slow patience. Veins of light pulsed beneath translucent walls. Somewhere deep inside the station, Something like breath moved through unseen caverns. Garcia stepped out first. His boots struck a deck that felt faintly warm. Not temperature, life. He glanced down and muttered, "That's never a good sign." Cade followed without hesitation. The air inside the Concorde smelled faintly of iron and flowers. An honor guard waited at the end of the corridor. They were not a single species. Tall arthropods with blade limbs, beasts with 3 jaws and ceremonial tusks, silken-skinned diplomats with eyes like liquid metal, armored soldiers whose faces never changed shape, no matter how wide they smiled. Garcia leaned close to Cade. "You ever notice how the bigger the empire, the uglier its furniture?" "Focus," Cade murmured. The guards turned as one. No command was spoken. And yet the corridor began to move, not forward, down. The floor sank beneath them, as if the core had decided they should be filed somewhere below importance. Garcia's hand drifted to his sidearm by instinct. Useless. He knew it. Cade knew it. Everybody knew it. This place could erase them from existence with a thought. The platform descended into a chamber so vast it distorted perception. The tribunal hall was not built. It was grown. Ridges arched overhead like the ribcage of a dead god. The walls glowed in veins of blue and dying gold. The far end of the hall rose into a tiered structure of living thrones, each occupied by something that had learned to dominate its corner of the galaxy. At the center, elevated above all of them, sat High Strategos Vex Kithar, 8 eyes, all open, watching. On the floor level before the thrones, a wide basin of black glass reflected the entire chamber upside down. Its surface shimmered as if it remembered other skies. "Welcome," Vex Kithar said. The word had no hospitality in it. Humanity. Garcia rolled his shoulder. The air felt heavy now, charged. "You're taller on screen," he said casually. A ripple went through the chamber. Not laughter, calculation. Vex Kithar did not respond to Garcia. He never took his eyes off Cade. "The youngest species to ever request a seat among powers," the Strategos said lightly. "And instead, you send a museum piece." Cade stood straight, hands clasped behind his back, eyes forward. "You summoned us." "Yes," Vex Kithar agreed. "And you came." A minor chord sounded through the chamber. Not sound, something deeper. A ritual acknowledgement. Alien dignitaries leaned forward in their seats. Vex Kithar raised one talon. The black basin ignited with light. Images burst into existence. Cities, alien cities. Massive, towering things with geometry that bent inward. Towers that sang with energy. Habitats that swam in atmospheres no human had ever breathed. Then, fire, orbital strikes, planetary bombardment, atmospheres torn away like peeling skin, civilizations dying in real time, screams translated into silence. Garcia's jaw locked. A species with wings burned as it fled, a race of crystalline beings shattered under sonic fire. Children, not human, huddled as soldiers shaped like nightmares walked through their homes. The Concorde did not use soft war. It used demonstration. "This," Vex Kithar said calmly, "is order." No one in the human delegation moved. Cade's eyes did not leave the basin. Garcia's hands curled into fists so tight the joints turned white. The display shifted. Planets marked with glowing sigils. Species X92, purged. Culture Kethvar, dissolved. Language tree. Alpha, archived. Population, reallocated. Reallocated. Garcia pressed his tongue to his cheek. That's a nice word for slavery. A few heads turned. Vex Kithar tilted his head. "Slavery is a primitive concept," he replied. "We control outcomes, not individuals." The footage ended. The basin went dark. Silence returns, thick as oil. Vex Kithar leaned forward. "You see now," he said, "why resisting us is inefficient. Cade finally moved. Just his eyes. They lifted, met Vex Kethar's. "We see," he said. The Strategos smiled. "Good." He gestured with one claw. A scribe creature skittered forward on too many legs, carrying a living document in its hands. The surface of the object writhed with contracts written in flesh and light. "Humanity," Vex Kethar announced. "You have been assessed and categorized." The scribe raised its voice like a choir of insects. "Species designation updated," it intoned. "Status controllable. Utilization rights pending assignment. Compliance window immediate." Garcia's head lifted slowly. "What?" he said quietly. "Did you just call us?" Vex Kethar studied him like a curious animal. "Property," he clarified. The word echoed. Not loudly. Finally. Cade inhaled, then exhaled, slowly. The kind of breath a man takes before choosing violence. He shifted his stance by half an inch. Just enough. Garcia knew that posture. Cade turned his head slightly, not toward the enemy, toward the ship, toward the air, toward the thing that lived with them. "Lullaby," he said. The word carried through the chamber in a way sound should not. Every sensor in the Concorde trembled. "Yes, Captain," came the soft reply, across every channel, inside every machine. Cade did not raise his voice. He did not posture. He did not threaten. He simply said, "Sing." The chamber did not explode. Nothing caught fire. No alarms blared. Instead, a child's melody slipped into existence. Soft. Simple. 4 notes, rising and falling like a pulse. The sound was not spoken into the air. It came through metal, through light, through circuitry. The Concorde's translation system stuttered, then failed. Data streams hiccuped. Lights dimmed a fraction. The song continued. Vex Kethar stiffened. "What is this?" he whispered. Garcia felt it in his teeth, in his bones. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fast. It was old. The nursery rhyme was not pretty. It was not sad. It simply existed. And everywhere it touched, systems woke. Not Concorde systems, older ones. Hidden conduits in the walls began to glow beneath the organic plating. Lines that had been dead for millennia, lit like memory. Deep in space, silent beacons stirred. Satellite constellations that predated half the species in the room blinked awake one by one. Forgotten gates flared into readiness. The song threaded through the galaxy like a needle through skin. Symbols crawled across it that were not Concorde script. Coordinates nobody had mapped in 1,000 years burned into place. One of the Concorde warships, docked far out in the fleet ring, lost power. No explosion. No drama. It simply went dark. The vessel drifted, dead as fresh meat. Gasps scattered through the tribunal. Vex Kethar stood abruptly. "Cease this noise!" he roared. The song did not stop. Vex Kethar raised his arm. "Destroy their vessel!" Nothing happened. The command did not reach the fleet. Weapons arrays trembled. Controls spat errors. The song wasn't louder, but it was deeper. Cade kept watching their thrones. The alien delegates were not laughing now. Some stared at their flickering consoles. Some whispered in panic. Some simply sat very still. Vex Kethar's 8 eyes darted around the chamber as if hunting for an invisible attacker. "This is not possible," he hissed. Cade finally stepped forward. The sound of his boots echoed, once, twice. Then silence again. "You invited us," Cade told him calmly. "You displayed your crimes. You declared our fate." He glanced at the basin of black glass. "And then," he continued, "you claimed ownership over a species that has done nothing wrong." Vex Kethar's voice cracked, but he was unable to speak. Cade looked at him. Not with rage, not with hatred. with tired recognition. Lullaby's song shifted, just slightly. The conquered core shuddered, not in fear, in alignment. Tiers of the tribunal adjusted, veins of light reconfigured. Power began flowing somewhere it had not flowed in a very long time. Garcia stared at the space between the thrones as lines of status appeared he did not know how to read, but somehow understood anyway. Vex Cathar backed away from his throne and managed to speak. "What are you?" he demanded. Cade did not answer directly. Instead, he gestured to the massive chamber. "To you?" he said. "We were young." The song softened, then carried on. Deeper. Behind them, something ancient stretched. And the Concord, colossal, tyrannical, unstoppable, finally remembered that it had not always belonged to them. The Concord did not realize the humans were leaving. Not at first. The tribunal hall was still wrapped in the residue of Lullaby's song. Not silence, not sound, but a distortion in awareness. Systems ran, lights glowed, delegates breathed, but nothing connected. Orders did not propagate, commands did not compile. Security protocols circled like lost animals. Cade turned from the basin without ceremony. "Garcia, status," he said. "Corridor 12 is still blind," Garcia replied, eyes scanning columns of dead text rolling through a wrist unit that did not exist on any Concord database. Their local security grid is looping visual feed from 6 minutes ago. Sentries think we're statues. Good. They walked. Not fast, not slow, just away. The Concord's honor guard still stood where they had been stationed, weapons in hand, eyes unfocused, shrouded inside the last heartbeat of Lullaby's signal. A few shifted, confused. One clawed his own face as if waking from anesthesia. None raised a weapon. The humans passed between them, like ghosts. Garcia glanced back once at the chamber. Vex Cathar knelt where his throne had rejected him, claws sunk into an obsidian floor that no longer acknowledged his authority. "Enjoy the aftertaste," Garcia muttered. Cade didn't answer. They exited the tribunal and entered a passageway that no conquered architect had touched. Pre-conquered architecture lay beneath the bone and metal grafting of the station. Smooth arcs of matte black alloy, corridors that curved in deliberate non-Euclidean grace, panels that responded to human presence without gesture or code. "This part of the station never went to sleep," Garcia said quietly. "They just forgot it existed." "Or pretended it didn't," Cade replied. The doors ahead did not open. They dissolved. The Gilgamesh waited where it had been left, docked like an artifact in a museum that had finally remembered who owned it. Garcia moved first, straight into engineering. 78 seconds until total Concord hardware reboot, he called back. "That's our window." Cade followed him onto the bridge. "Lullaby," Cade said. The song cut off, instantly. The Concord woke up, not calmly, not cleanly. It was like a body slammed back into consciousness mid-injury. The station screamed with alarms the humans never heard. Control spines across the megastructure lit up as command authority scrambled to reassert itself. Damage reports began flooding into command nexus that no longer existed. "Undocking!" Garcia snapped. "Now!" The Gilgamesh slipped free of the core like a blade sliding out of flesh. No clearance, no diplomatic signal. They accelerated straight out of the Concord's heart. Behind them, order returned with rage. Vex Cathar found his feet with all the dignity of a creature bred for dominance. His mind screed had fractured, not shattered, cracked. "Track them!" he roared. "Now!" His command staff lifted blackened control slabs that pulsed with recovered authority. Around the tribunal, alien lords were screaming into dead consoles, demanding explanations their systems could not give. "We lost lock," one officer hissed, signal ghosting in every spectrum. "Then use your eyes," Vex Cathar bellowed. The great viewports reactivated. The Gilgamesh was already leaving orbit. Tiny, black, offending. "Launch interception," Vex Kethar snarled. "What scale?" The Strategos bared his teeth. "All of it." The Oblivion phalanx came alive. Strike wings poured from carriers like blood from opened veins. Capital ships rotated into pursuit vectors. Fleet geometry reshaped itself with brutal elegance. Vex Kethar's voice thundered through 1,000 bridges. "Erase it!" The hunt began. On the Gilgamesh bridge, Garcia was smiling. "Tracking handshake incoming," he said. "They're trying to cage us with mass lock fields." "Status?" Cade asked. Garcia tilted his head, listening not to sound, but to gravity. "They're sloppy," he replied. "Fast, but emotional. They've never chased something that doesn't leave a wake." Cade seated himself. "Make them adjust." Garcia's hands moved. The ship twitched, and reality twitched around it. The gravity net snapped shut on empty space. 3 Concorde destroyers slammed into each other at relativistic speed, where the Gilgamesh had been a heartbeat earlier. The blast was white. Then nothing. Garcia rolled his shoulders. "One!" "It's not a game," Cade replied. The Concorde did not slow. They adapted. Interdiction nodes flared across the flight path, tearing false shadows from subspace. "They're closing," Garcia said. "Fast." "Let them," Cade answered. The Gilgamesh didn't accelerate. It turned. Directly toward the incoming wall of alloy and hatred. Garcia chuckled once. "Oh, Captain, they're not going to like this." The lead Concorde cruiser opened fire. Plasma spears stitched through vacuum like angry gods. Garcia didn't flinch. "Lullaby." "Yes, Garcia." "Open Doctrine Node 1. Authorized." The hull of the Gilgamesh changed. Not glowing, not shining. Reconfiguring. Old seams slid aside like teeth unlocking. Geometry folded inward and outward. What had been a vessel became a machine that had remembered how to kill. The first plasma spear struck the forward lattice and vanished, not deflected, unmade. The second weapon impacted and died mid-flight. The third never arrived. Garcia leaned forward, eyes wild. "They don't know what they're hitting." Another cruiser closed inside kill envelope and fired a full salvo. Garcia drove a sequence across the navigation mesh. Space fractured. The enemy reactor spiked to critical in half a breath. The ship tore itself apart from the inside. The Concorde bridge feeds lit up across Vex Kethar's command neural. 1 ship lost, then 2, then 5. "What is it doing?" a Concorde captain screamed. The Gilgamesh did not fire weapons. It rewrote enemy physics. Garcia laughed. Honest, cracked laughter. "Captain, they're trying to rotate shields against us." Cade stood. "Advance!" The Gilgamesh surged forward, directly into the formation. Not dodging fire, walking through it. The next Concorde cruiser suffered navigation collapse. Its spatial sensors vomited false data until the ship misread distance and slammed into its own dreadnought escort at full acceleration. Debris scattered like bones. The phalanx began to break formation, not tactically, emotionally. "They're panicking," Garcia said. "Perfect. Let's teach them something permanent." "Doctrine 2, Cade ordered. "Enabling." The stars went wrong. Not explosion, not light. Wrong. A fracture line unzipped existence along the flank of the enemy fleet. 3 vessels were torn sideways into that wound, stretched into impossible geometry before snapping out of being entirely. "Captain," Garcia breathed, reverent for the first time. They finally realized they picked a fight with something that remembers war. The Concorde controllers screamed into dead channels. 1 destroyer tried to flee. It didn't get far. The Gilgamesh twisted again. The enemy ship folded like paper into a gravity pocket and imploded. Silence followed. Not victory silence. The shocked kind. Then, everything turned. The remaining capital ships did not retreat. They surged. A wall of guns lit the void. "Brace!" Garcia snapped. Cade didn't move. The next barrage struck. The Gilgamesh shook. The hull absorbed fire it had not felt in millennia. "Status?" Cade asked. Garcia checked, then smiled wider. "No structural compromise. But," he paused, "they figured out where our shadow should be." "Lullaby," Cade said. "Permission to answer." "Granted, Captain." Doctrine 3. The AI's voice sharpened. No longer childlike, no longer gentle. Acknowledged. The Gilgamesh spoke back at last. It did not use language. It used consequence. A pulse rippled outward. Every conquered ship within 5,000 kilometers lost power simultaneously. No damage, not destruction. Power. Their lights died. Their weapons froze. Their engines went quiet. The oblivion phalanx drifted. A dead god's armada. Garcia leaned back and blew out a breath. "I think we hurt their feelings." Cade watched the darkened fleet. "We're not done." Behind them, signals flared again. The Concord was rebooting subroutines with fury. Cade turned away. "Set course," he said. Garcia nodded. Coordinates he had carried since childhood burned onto the nav screen. "Home vector loaded," he said softly. The Gilgamesh vanished into folded space. Behind her, the oblivion phalanx screamed into darkness. High Strategos. Vex Kithar stood on a bridge of smoking glass. Half his fleet was gone. The other half drifted crippled. His empire, immaculate, surgical, eternal, had been slapped across the mouth by a relic, and it was bleeding. "Mark them," he snarled. "Name them." His aides hesitated. "How do we classify them?" "Strategos." Vex Kithar's voice dropped into something that had never existed before in his culture. Fear. "We classify them as an extinction-grade civilization." He stared into the stars where the human ship had disappeared. "And we prepare the galaxy for war. Far beyond conquered reach." The Gilgamesh traveled through lanes only the dead remembered. Garcia scrubbed a hand down his face. "That," he said, "went about as expected." Cade looked at him dryly. "Your expectations are disturbing." Garcia shrugged. "Experiences like that." The ship hummed, not with music, with readiness. Behind them, the Concorde prepared vengeance. Ahead, something the galaxy had buried was beginning to move. The galaxy did not wait. It retaliated. Across 1,000 systems, emergency broadcasts cut through civilian feeds without warning. Trade halls went dark mid-transaction. Entertainment networks shattered into screaming red glyphs. Navigation overlays were overridden with one message, stamped in conquered gold. Galactic security alert. Humans possess impossible technology not matching their cultural development. They steal from dead civilizations. They weaponize relics they don't understand. They are scavengers, pretending to be gods. All contact is to be considered lethal. Then came the footage. An orbital hub, colossal, bright, crowded, burning. Docking rings sheared away. Civilian cruisers splitting under fire. Thousands of ships fleeing in every direction as flames crawled along the station's spine. A Concorde task force arrived just in time. Concorde guns answered the fires. Concorde medics pulled wounded from wreckage. Concorde banners rose against the smoke. The image cut to High Strategos Vex Kethar, framed in cold steel and morning black. "Citizens of the galaxy," he declared, voice weighed with practiced gravity. "Humanity has revealed itself, not as harmless, not as irrelevant, but as a predator." The feeds rewound. Explosions replayed from multiple angles. Human silhouettes, false, fabricated, were burned into the imagery. Audio tracks spliced, timelines adjusted, data cleansed. This was an unprovoked attack on commerce, culture, and life, Vex Kethar intoned. Our fleets arrived to stop them. Many did not arrive in time. Across the stars, Old empires clenched their fists. Young species wept. Mercenary clans sharpened blades. Lawful republics signed emergency war powers without reading the clauses. The Concord was very good at this. They made lies clean. They made war righteous. They made fear contagious. Within hours, Concord ambassadors stood in 100 courts, dispensing intelligence and evidence. Neutral systems closed their gates. Independent fleets swore allegiance in exchange for protection. One species called the humans void demons. Another named them Star Butcher. A third worshipped the Concord for standing between them and extinction. By the end of the cycle, humanity was no longer a harmless species. Humanity was a monster. On a bridge of fractured command and burning banners, High Strategos Vexkithar watched the numbers climb. Allies pledged, battle groups activated, drives spun up. The Concord's loss had hardened into purpose. Deployment orders, he snapped. All sectors. We sweep. We burn their hiding places. We make an example large enough to echo. A subordinate leaned in. Which species receives strike authority? Vexkathar's eyes glinted. All of them. The hunters arrived. War fleets flying under borrowed banners began to scour jump corridors and border systems. Civilian stations were stopped and searched. Any ship with unusual signal bleed was fired upon on suspicion alone. Whole convoys vanished. Human merchant vessels were vaporized without warning. Refuge colonies were blacklisted from aid. The Concord didn't just want humanity dead. They wanted humanity alone. Far from Concord space, the Gilgamesh moved through lanes no hunter had charted. The bridge was dim, not dark. Focused. Garcia stood at a broad console that resembled a slab of dead star, fingers moving where no controls were visible. They're mobilizing behind every lie they've got, he said quietly. Propaganda worked. The galaxy thinks we staged the massacre. Cade nodded. They were ready to believe it. Garcia continued. People don't need truth to choose sides. They just need permission. The ship shuddered, not from damage, but from awakening. Internal systems shifted as doctrine layers reactivated. Rails of power warmed beneath the floors. Deep coils whispered as they uncorked ancient reserves. Lullaby, Cade said. Yes, Captain. Status. Legacy lattice nodes are responding, Lullaby replied. Infrastructure resonance at 20%. Rising. Garcia's mouth twitched. Enough to move! Cade nodded. We don't wait. Garcia didn't look away. Then we cripple their momentum now. The tactical display flared between them. A system burned into view. A CHERON conquered fleet assembly planet. A world-sized machine. Shipyards buried beneath continents of armor. Orbital rings thick with construction arrays. Population. Military caste. Purpose. Fleet production. Garcia dragged a hand through his hair. They're birthing juggernauts out there. Every cycle we wait is 10 more warships hunting us. We won't wait, Cade said. Lullaby's interface shifted. Target analysis complete. Proceed, Cade ordered. The Concord never saw it coming. Acheron hung in perfect order. Layers of platforms stitched together by bright supply lanes. Warships in every stage of creation tethered like metal beasts waiting to wake. Defense networks hummed. Cameras watched empty stars. Then space bent wrong. Not violently, quietly. The Gilgamesh stepped out of folded dark directly inside the exclusion perimeter. One ship. Alone. The defense grid locked instantly. Thousands of guns aligned, then failed. A halo of interference rolled outward from the Gilgamesh like a living thing. Phalanxes froze. Automated batteries misfired. Internal navigation scrambled until warships forgot where outside was. Alarms bloomed. Garcia cracked his knuckles. Time to introduce ourselves properly. Doctrine 1, Cade said. Active. Garcia reached out. Space listened. The first orbital ring collapsed inward when its structural logic inverted. Entire tracts of plating tore free and splashed across the atmosphere like burning cities. The second ring lost grav stability and disintegrated into blue flame. Shipyards ruptured like exposed organs. The horizon of Acheron caught fire. Concord Command screamed for clarity. They got silence. Cade watched the screen coldly. Doctrine 2. The Gilgamesh pulsed. Inside half-assembled hulls, reactors surged exactly 1% beyond containment. Hundreds of ships died at birth in synchronized white light. The planet's defense grid reinitialized. For 3 seconds. That was enough. Garcia smiled without humor. Doctrine 3. The ground itself turned against the Concorde. Anti-orbital cannons ruptured as power flowed backward into their mounts. Factories detonated from the inside out. Acheron's atmosphere ignited in sheets, the sky turning into a furnace that erased cities and lines. The world screamed. Sensors across the Concorde lit with casualty readouts. War factories went dark. Assembly lines died. Dockyards burned. Then, silence. The planet did not explode. Humanity did not waste energy on spectacle. They crushed function, not geography. Acheron survived, but it would never build another warship. Cade turned from the view. "Transmit nothing," he said. They were not claiming credit. They were delivering consequence. The Gilgamesh stepped back into dark. The Conquered learned within minutes. Vex Kethar stared at the burning system with something that had never touched his kind before. A data officer whispered, "Acheron is neutralized." The Strategos closed his eyes once, then opened them with fury. "They hit our womb," he snarled. One of the junior tacticians spoke without permission. "High Strategos, if they can do that to Acheron." Vex Kethar did not answer. He didn't need to. The galaxy would. Hours later, the Concorde tried to rally their new allies. But the feeds were wrong now. Too quiet, too careful. 1,000 worlds stared at dead war footage and whispered, "That didn't look like saviors. That didn't look like chaos. That looked like judgment." Military academies began purging Conquered doctrine overnight. Fleet captains hesitated. Some never received the order to move. Some refused it. The lie still stood. But it shook. On the Gilgamesh, the lights dimmed slightly. Lullaby's system settled. "Strike complete," she said. "Infrastructure kill efficiency, 99.2. Garcia sat down heavily. "Not bad for our first lesson." Cade studied the dark ahead. "They will come harder now." Garcia looked at Cade sideways. Now the galaxy learned something important. "And what's that?" Cade asked. Garcia's smile was thin and merciless. "That we don't destroy stations to send messages." He stood. "We erase worlds to end conversations." The first builders were done waiting, and the galaxy's war had finally become real.
Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here. Or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.